before we start, here's a little story about me and Yuel. You see, normally the gacha game player, grinds and does everything in its power to get his or her favorite character, or waifu or husbando. But with me and Yuel, it's the other way around. So when Yuel Summer came out, there was a free draws event, and Yuel must really like me because she came out 4 times, and three of those times were in a row. Some months after, Water Yuel came out twice in a row, and Fire Yuel landed me sometimes as well. So as you can see, Yuel, I'm pretty dear to Yuel's heart. So in honor of our favorite curious cat, in this episode of GBF Lore, we'll take a dive into a little bit of Yuel's story. But before that, there's a lot to cover with the whole Ninetales arc, but I'll only talk about Fire Yuel's character stories before the full limit break. The full limit break story has major spoilers regarding Yuel's and Associates events, therefore I won't be covering that in this episode. Yuel's first Fate episode is the energetic Iron, and that's not an understatement. Yuel is very much energetic. She's basically a Catgirl on crack. The story starts with our crew spotting a smoke signal coming from a small island, but when they land, they find no one there. They're then jumped by Yuel, who mistakes them for kidnappers. They clear the misunderstanding, and V tells her about the smoke signals. It turns out Yuel was just grilling some fish with her fox flame. A strange kind of fire only Yuel and her kind can use. Apparently, Yuel is also kinda lost in this small island, so she asks the crew if she can join them. But before they leave, Yuel notices the axe, the one you had to draw to get Fire Yuel, has a family crest on it. She tells the crew she was ordered to find 3 sacred treasures of a long-lost royal family, and that's why she mistook them for kidnappers, and also why she got lost. She also reveals that, according to legends, there are as much as 8 of these treasures. Seeing an opportunity to find these sacred treasures, she asks once more to join the crew, and they welcome the cheery fox lady with open arms. That was the first Fate episode. It's a pretty short one. It just introduces us to Yuel as a character, and the royal fox families that are important to the events I talked about previously, those being Forgiveness and Gratitude, and Ko and the Hollow Existence. Next, we have the second Fate episode, A Wonderful Gift. The crew arrives at a distant island to investigate some things, and shortly after, Yuel's curiosity gets the best of her, and she chases after an Mdina, a small creature you usually find in Granblue Fantasy side-scrolling bits. Everyone follows Yuel, but they end up losing sight of the Mdina and fighting a bunch of monsters. However, within the monster den, there's a beautiful flower. After a little bit, they find the Mdina again, and Yuel starts chasing after it again. They fight some more monsters, but right after defeating them, they find some delicious looking fruits. Every time Yuel wanders off on her own, they end up fighting monsters, but also discovering something cool. Yuel's curiosity never seems to end. After noticing the Mdina's long ears, she runs after it again. This time, her curiosity seems to be contagious, and the crew joins Yuel in their chase. They finally catch up to the Mdina, but it seems that it's being threatened by a big monster. Everyone helps the Mdina by defeating the beast, but right when they defeat it, the friendly-looking animal is gone. Saddened that this might be the end of their little venture, they go back to the ship. But, out of the corner of Yuel's eye, she notices the great view their little chase brought them to. A beautiful sunset stands before them. Once again, Yuel's curiosity paid off. They thank the little Mdina for bringing them there, and return to the ship. That was Yuel's second Fate episode. It was nothing special, it was quite wholesome, but it only served to highlight that Yuel is kind of a free spirit, always going after what she finds curious. And it also teaches a little nice message about curiosity and how it may lead to dangerous things but also wonderful things. You never know where your journey might lead. But beyond that, there's not much to this story. The third Fate episode is called Losing is Winning, and this one is going to involve another character called Societte. You don't need to know anything about her, except that Yuel and Societte are very good friends. And also that both are involved in the whole Royal Fox family sacred treasures story. I'll cover Societte in another video, so don't worry. It starts with Yuel and Societte chilling in a grand cipher. They're headed towards an island where the weapons Yuel and Societte are looking for are supposedly hidden. They arrive at some village ruins, and the team splits up to find the weapons without much success. While Yuel is wondering if she's in the right island, a mysterious young man calls out to Yuel, but before she can investigate, she notices that Societte is missing. Yuel calls the rest of the team to search for Societte, and they find two bandits who tricked Societte saying they would help her find the weapons. Yuel unmasks the true intent of the pair to kidnap the girls and get the Nine Tails power for themselves. The team defeats the bandits. While talking to the bandits, Yuel ends up finding she's also an heir to the royal families. She didn't know this, only that Societte was an heir, so she's a little surprised to say the least. She tries to use her Fox Flame to burn the bandits, but her power stops working and she ends up collapsing. The bandits' boss shows up, being all evil and stuff, but he's easily defeated as well. They bring Yuel back to the Grand Cipher, and she's very bummed out. I mean, who wouldn't after losing their powers? The Ninetales Fox Flame powers were a thing passed down for centuries, along with their dances and sacred treasures. That's how Societte got her powers, but as for Yuel, she always kinda had them. Societte wonders if Yuel's powers may be incomplete, and that the treasures may help her get her powers back. Yuel goes out for a walk, and the crew soon goes after her. Yuel ends up finding the mysterious E-rune from before. This E-rune calling her master. Meeting up with the crew again, they decide to follow the mysterious man. They arrive at the village feeling very uneasy. Lyria senses a great power, not a primal beast, something different, something that wasn't there before. They approach a small shrine, and within it, a pedestal with two rusted swords, two sacred treasures, very faint in power, but sacred treasures nonetheless. The E-rune from before tells Yuel that her Fox Flame powers were only borrowed powers, and that by picking up the swords, she will get her true powers, the powers of the promised heir to the royal household. Yuel touches the sword, and the crew becomes wreathed in flame. A voice talks to Yuel. It calls itself one of the 9 flames, and releases some fire monsters to test Yuel's worthiness. She regains her Fox Flame powers and defeats the monsters. With the monsters gone, the swords on the pedestal starts to glow. She pulls the swords, finally gaining her true power, and new knowledge about the royal dances that were within the swords. The E-rune, although glad to see Yuel succeed, says the dance is not enough. Yuel must perfect the 3rd dance. In total, there are 10 numbered dances, this one being number 3 of course. An heir to the royal dances must know at least one. The E-rune starts to flicker and wither, finally disappearing, and trusting Yuel with the Ninetales power. So that's Fire Yuel's first 3 Fate episodes. As I said before, I won't be covering the FLB story here as it has major spoilers for later events. But I needed to cover at least these 3 to give some context to those events. As for my opinion, I think this is a clear example of the earlier storytelling of Granblue, which was pretty basic, not at all detailed like it is now. The first 2 stories don't give a lot of context to the plot surrounding Yuel, other than the fact that she can control Fox Flame and also some dances. The 3rd Fate episode, I thought it was a bit confusing because they introduced some information about the Ninetales and royal families, but they were purposefully leaving it open-ended. Even Yuel is confused by it. Also, it slightly contradicts later events in my opinion, but you have to understand they probably wanted to take a story in one direction, but later thought it was pretty generic, so they took it in another direction, which I think was more interesting. I hope you liked this video. Tell me on the comments what I should cover next. Maybe a little more main story, some more events, more favorite episodes, or even something completely different. I'll leave you with one question though. Who's your favorite Catgirl?